Hey everyone. Hey Paul. Hey Jim. How are you doing?
Hey,
Doing
Roman.
great. Looking
Great.
forward to the conversation.
Likewise. Very exciting topic here today. Hello again to all of our attendees. If you don't know who I am, I'm Ronak Shet, the founder and CEO of Lit Videobooks. A little bit about Lit. So we make learning from best-selling books as engaging and entertaining as watching a movie or a documentary. If you want more info, just stay tuned at the end of the chat. For now, let's settle in for what I think is going to be a really exciting conversation on AI, the future of work, and how humans and machines can thrive together. We're going to save 15 minutes or so for Q&A at the end, and we'll add the Slido link into the chat so you can add questions and upvote what you want to hear answered by Paul and Jim at the end. And Paul and Jim, before we dive in, I'd love to share a bit about both of your backgrounds. So, Paul, as Accenture's senior technology advisor, you bring nearly 40 years of experience helping organizations navigate emerging technologies. Previously, as the chief technology and innovation officer at Accenture, you helped shape their technology strategy and have guided some of the world's largest companies through digital transformation and how to implement AI. And also, as the co author of Human Plus Machine, you explore how AI isn't here to replace us, but here to help us work smarter and drive innovation. Now, Jim, you are the global managing director of information technology and business research at Accenture Research, where you study how emerging technologies impact workers and organizations. You've led research at Babson Executive Education and Bain& Company, contributed to Harvard Business Review and the Wall Street Journal, and also, of course, co-authored Human Plus Machine with Paul. Really excited to have you both here today and talk about all things AI. So, to get started, Paul, could you tell us a little bit about your experience with AI and how you've seen companies utilize it? When did you start on your AI journey and start advising companies? And maybe what are some of the common challenges you see that they're facing right now?
Yeah, we could probably spend the whole podcast on that question. But so in terms of AI, I've been working, studying AI, researching AI for back to my university days in the mid 80s with some of the pioneering AI researchers that were, kind of active then. And so it's kind of always been something of deep interest to me. My primary focus across my career has been the intersection of people and technology, how technology impacts, people and what we do, and how people influence the development of technology. And nowhere has that been more fascinating than with the evolution of AI. So in the 90s, I was working with the AI at the time, which we referred to as expert systems, and applying them in business. And then that moved on to other forms of technology, machine learning and deep learning, and the generative AI of today as time went on. Over the course of that, in my roles at Accenture, I founded our AI, our artificial intelligence business that was about 13 years ago when we set that up formally. And yeah, had many other roles related to advancing our AI business and working with many clients and many of the AI pioneers and big AI companies around what's happening with AI. And one of the most fun parts of it is what we're talking about today is collaborating with Jim, who's my great partner here, on looking at what the real impact is, this human plus machine idea. Jim and I have been working around on research around that since well before the book, and continue to do so with some new ideas we're working on for the future. And so really excited for the conversation today.
Thanks, Paul. And Jim, how about you? What kind of patterns maybe have you noticed with companies and how they're incorporating AI, and how did you kind of get your start working with AI?
Well, Paul and I, going back a number of years, found that we had a common interest around human and machine interaction. There was a book on the topic by Shoshana Zuboff that we talked about some time ago that kind of got this conversation going. At Accenture, I lead a lot of our cross-industry research initiatives on AI's impact, working with our clients, working with academic institutions and our research teams. And I also sit on the board of a couple AI startups as well. So I'm hearing all about AI in discussions with business leaders, and I'm seeing kind of trends emerge in our large scale studies and our economic analysis. And in this work, I consistently hear a few really basic questions around AI from executives, and we see these come up again and again in our studies. First of all, most business leaders have a basic concern around how to change the business, right? Around artificial intelligence. So how do I change the business? What's the vision for what a changed organization should look like? A second kind of pattern that I've seen, and Paul and I talk about all the time, we talk about it a bit in the video book, is how do you separate what is real from what is kind of hype or even science fiction, right? AI has been discussed, in our culture going back, almost 100 years. There have been a lot of Hollywood movies on the topic. And so we have a lot of biases in our head around what AI can do and worries around AI. And so when we first started doing this research and writing the book, we really tried to separate kind of hype from reality. And that kind of leads to the third thing that we're really we wrote the book for, and that is to give executives a real grounded view on how to get started on their AI journey. Not just a 5-year view, but actually what can you start to do today or Monday morning to begin to evolve your career or reinvent your company, right? So those are three kind of patterns that we see, and we address in the book, and I'm looking forward to talking about those today with you.
Yeah, and one thing I'd add on to to what Jim just said there in terms of kind of what I'm seeing right now with a lot of the companies, executives, and people that I'm talking to is kind of is first they're trying to understand the technology, like what is it, because it's changing so fast. You hear these mind-boggling new announcements and things continuously. So there's that understanding part of this, and then there's the value and risks, and that's what people businesses are really trying to understand. Where's the value? Where's the business value? How's it going to really impact costs, growth, whatever you're trying to optimize around? And then what are the risks? And there's in my business, how does it impact people, jobs, the responsible AI, a lot of the things we're going to talk about on this call. And I think that's why right now we're at a stage where a lot of companies, almost every company believes they need to be doing something with AI. Most companies are doing some level of proof of concept, but only a small percentage, less than 20%, depending on how you measure it, are really doing scaled AI in big parts of their business, and that's the hurdle that companies are trying to get past.
It's really interesting. I think this is just such a timely conversation, and you're right that the rapid pace of AI developments every day and every week, it seems like there's something new to keep track of. So really excited for the conversation, and we're transforming industries with AI at such an incredible pace, and it honestly feels like we're just scratching the surface. But want to introduce everyone to the Human Plus Machine video book now, and show a clip of explaining kind of how we got here with AI and what's to come. So
we have to back up and recognize that we're living in an era of exponential technology innovation. We can interact in a more human and more natural way with the technology.
Can you assist me in dangerous tasks?
As a robot, I'm designed to help with difficult or repetitive tasks.
The first generation was simply standardized processes, and this came in with manufacturing, Henry Ford and the like, with instituting disciplined, standardized mechanisms in the way that people worked, over a century ago. And then with the rise of computerization and digitalization, we entered a second stage of automation of processes in the way that work was done. Now with AI, and in particular with generative AI, the technology has a new and more unique human-like quality to it, and it's leading to this third wave of business processes where we're working with the technology more like we'd work with a colleague, and that's leading to new capabilities in the way we as people do our jobs. And this is the real unleash or unlock of new capability that we're talking about in Human Plus Machine.
Really exciting, and yeah, that man was having a full conversation with the robot. And Paul, maybe you can kick us off here. How do you see AI evolving beyond a lot of the generative models that are gaining popularity today, like ChatGPT? What would you say is, the next frontier in AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we have to keep in mind is how fast AI is generative AI now in particular is moving. We've talked about already on this webcast is AI has been around for a long time. Jim talked about a little bit of the history, and things like what I would call predictive AI have been around for a few decades and used in business. So recommending the right book for you to choose as you're shopping for other books, things like that are that's AI that's been very common in our lives. Mapping applications and the like would be other examples. Then there's diagnostic AI, which is doing things like, facial recognition that we use when we, to log into our phones and apps, and many, many other kind of examples of it. So AI is already part of our lives today. And generative AI, just to qualify what we're talking about, the generative AI is what's new, made, famous to the world through ChatGPT, the ChatGPT app from OpenAI, a little over 2 years ago, 2 years and a few months ago. And so generative AI is moving so fast. I think you just have to kind of look at where it's going, and just think about what's happened within recent months. We had some really big announcements at the Consumer Electronics Show about world foundation models, not large language models, which work on language that like ChatGPT, but world foundation models that understand the physical world and properties and objects and things, which is one of the big breakthroughs coming when we have mature world foundation models that don't just scan and understand everything that's on the internet, but understand the world around us. That's a big breakthrough because to be honest, we're running out of data to train the models, of today, and world foundation models will help AI do what humans do, which we learn by observing, interacting with the real world. And world foundation models combined with large language models are what's going to enable that breakthrough. And that was, something that was talked about a lot. Jensen Huang and his, from NVIDIA in his keynote at CES is one example among others. Then we had, Stargate talking, which was the announcement of $500 billion data centers and others following with other announcements about the massive compute capability that's required. And the thing that's important to know about that is, and why that's important is, there's going to be a tremendous need for new compute capacity for the use of the models. It's not just the training of the models, which people think about how much does it cost to train the models. As more and more of us use these models, that's called the inference. And that's what's going to require tremendous compute capability. So, stay tuned and keep following this, all the activity and investment that's going in on that front. As a result, things like amazing news, like now 3 different nuclear power plants in the U.S., in the United States, that have been mothballed, being restarted just to power AI, AI data centers, and that's because of the increase in use that we're going to see going forward. And then DeepSeek was really big news that many of you, many listening, I'm sure, heard a lot about. And DeepSeek wasn't an advance in AI. It wasn't a better AI than the existing, than Claude from Anthropic or ChatGPT from OpenAI. What it was a better engineered AI. And that's something to watch, to your point, Ronak, going forward, of engineering advances that make AI, better, faster, cheaper. Like, that's just the law of technology. Things become better, faster, cheaper. DeepSeek was really showing how some engineering advances and algorithmic advances could be used to make to train the AI models 50% fast, or 50 times, or 50 times less expensively, and have them operate faster. So those are some of the things to pay attention to, and some of the concerns that are out there on cost, climate impact, and such. A lot of those will be need to be dealt with and focused on, but a lot of the advances of technology will help solve some of those problems as well. And then the final thing I'd say is, generative AI isn't the last exciting form of AI to come. I talked about predictive, diagnostic, and generative. Symbolic AI is something Jim and I have done a lot of work on around as well. And when generative AI is about predicting, the transformer architecture underpins generative AI, and it's predicting the next word, the next thing to come out. It's a predictive statistical technology that's very good at what it does. Symbolic AI is modeling real things. And combining symbolic AI and generative AI is where the next set of breakthroughs will come from. So if I'm thinking of laws of gravity and chemical properties and such, I don't necessarily want to learn those and have, inaccurate prediction on what might happen with them. I want to embed physical laws and physical knowledge into models. And that's why that's where symbolic AI will come in, along with generative AI, and that's where the next set of breakthroughs I believe will come from.
Wow, I mean, there's so much to unpack there. You're right. We could have had an entire separate fireside just on this. But Jim, would love to kind of hear your take as well. I guess, where do you see industries and companies maybe underutilizing AI today, and what opportunities are they missing out on?
Yeah, just to build on Paul's point, I'm out here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there's a lot of investment and energy around a kind of fuzzy idea that's called AGI, right? And so a lot of companies are working on that space. And, I don't know if right now, I'm having sometimes a hard time separating the hype from the reality around artificial general intelligence. But I do know that most companies are doing the best they can to build a more capable model that can work across domains. And that's why things like what Paul was saying, building a world model, building symbolic capabilities into these models is going to be important if you want to have a more general capable model. But, just to take a step back to where we are today and, thinking about generative AI, our research shows, and we talk about this in the book and video book, really a potential to transform more than 40% of working hours in the economy. And all industries, Ronak, are going to be impacted in our analysis. So we've done economic analysis across more than 20 industries. And even on the low end, more than 25% of the activities in industries like natural resources or utilities have potential to be changed with artificial intelligence. So no industry is really outside the scope of AI and Gen AI's impact. On the high end, where the majority of work tasks are going to be transformed by Gen AI, the top industries are banking, insurance, software and platforms, where we're seeing a lot of software engineers using Gen AI in their coding environments. And even the energy sector is up there, one of the top industries. And you might say, well, why the energy sector, right? But the thing that we're seeing is with that industry and several others, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there right now to transform the business. So we recently did an engagement with an Asia-based energy company that trained a Gen AI model on more than 250,000 documents that had a lot of vital information and data to really improve the decision-making across that company in their operations and in their equipment servicing and around worker safety. And before generative AI, all that data really wasn't useful, right? It was actually in physical logbooks, in some cases, digital logbooks in repositories that were kind of siloed off across the organization. But now, data-driven recommendations from those Gen AI systems are kind of at the fingertips of all the workers across the company, right? So just getting those physical logbooks, those digital logbooks up into a common Gen AI model has really improved the performance of the company. And one thing that we're also seeing there that's kind of interesting is bringing that data into those Gen AI systems not only improve the operational performance and is improving worker safety, but it's also accelerating the speed at which workers can be trained or onboarded into other roles, right? Because they kind of have a common way of learning, a common approach, common set of principles around, say, safety or predictive maintenance. They can tap into that and transition to new roles more quickly across the company. But I'll pause there.
Yeah, the one observation I'd make, having seen over the last 4 decades, all these different technology waves that swept through business from, mainframe distributed computing, the internet, cloud computing, mobile, AI now. Uh, there was always certain industries that were early adopters, and then certain industries that were laggards. This is different this time. With the pattern Jim just said, you can see different degrees of impact in different industries, but every industry is interested. CEOs and boards and executives, employees in every industry are looking at where the opportunities are. That's what's one thing that's different about this particular wave that we're in right now, because the impact of the technology of generative AI is so profound, and because it's kind of this human-like impact that we write about in the book, there really is an opportunity for, in surprising industries, maybe energy and insurance, which wouldn't have been leaders in some of these prior waves, now being at the leading edge in some cases with what companies are deploying with generative AI.
It is really exciting. I think that there's generally a lot of fear around AI is going to take away jobs, but I think, and we talk about this a little bit in the video book, that humans that really leverage AI will be able to just produce so much more. And there's things that we couldn't even think of, uh, and industries that will open up, and new jobs and roles that were never thought of before, that are going to enter into the public in many years and decades to come. And so it is such an exciting time. And Jim and Paul, so we have a lot of leaders in the audience today. One thing I wanted to ask you is, how does AI shift the role of leadership and traditional decision making within organizations? How should leaders be thinking about AI?
So I can start actually with a few quick data points there. So, I was just looking at a recent large-scale study on executive decision-making, and particularly it was around kind of more analytic decision-making. And the thing that I saw there that's kind of interesting is that AI alone achieved about 73% accuracy and effectiveness on decisions. The human executives alone were actually a bit better in that study at 80% decision effectiveness. But the AI amplified workers achieved 90%. So in other words, the executives tapping AI actually got a significant improvement by leveraging those systems. So I think a key question is, how do you intentionally change decision making in the way you make decisions, but also in the way your teams make decisions, to achieve this collaborative intelligence, a phrase that Paul and I use sometimes, where the human plus AI actually creates a better outcome than either the human alone or the machine alone. And the success factor that we see again and again is intentional human-centered design. And by intentional, we mean that tomorrow's IT systems, in combination with human managers, are going to purposefully delegate work to whichever partner is best suited for the task or the subtask at hand. And we see this in both our client work, but also our research, that really getting employee feedback on what really works can lead to some surprising outcomes. For example, we did a study last year on this topic, just building on that other study I was mentioning. And we provided 140 R&D professionals with a tool that highlighted potential errors and omissions coming out of Gen AI outputs. And then, the combined human plus AI outcomes were measured. And our results show that actually adding what we call speed bumps, where, for example, the AI tells the worker that its confidence in a response is really low, actually led to improved decision accuracy and spotlighting errors without significantly, increasing the time to make a decision or compromising, the decision's accuracy. So it's really important to do those types of pilots to figure out what is working kind of in the ranks, right? And get the employee feedback. Because sometimes actually, managers and the people designing better decisions across the organization don't know, and you can't know before you start piloting these tools.
Yeah, one thing I'd add to that, a phrase that I use often is that, with generative AI, executives and decision makers, everyone needs to think about it as a participation sport, not a spectator sport. And this is, again, different than prior technologies. The CEO didn't need to use cloud to have his business effectively, go through a cloud transformation. That's different now with generative AI. I would argue that those leaders who are hands-on, who understand and are using the technology, are better informed, better able to make decisions. And there's a correlation. I was talking to a large group. We're exchanging, some observations on this recently. And those organizations that are moving faster have kind of leaders, and throughout their workforce are participants. They're using it. They're engaging with it, and that's very different. And I'd really ask everyone to kind of take that to heart. And I think everybody in any role needs to think about, am I using, generative AI on a daily basis? Have I integrated in? Do I understand, how it's going to impact my organization? It takes, I think, a firsthand experience with it from the top, from the CEO on down through the organization to really understand it.
It is really interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there in terms of how leaders can kind of stay up to date on what things they should be focusing on, and which AI developments they can kind of incorporate into their daily workflow. But I'm sure that will come up in the Q&A. But wanted to bring up one of the, I would say, one of the most interesting points and concepts that the video book is centered on, which is the missing middle, about how kind of humans and machines can collaborate. Wanted to share a clip about how BMW, who was featured in the video book, is capitalizing on this kind of collaboration.
BMW has a long history of robot and human collaboration.
Actually, BMW has been leveraging robotics in production since really the early 80s. Robotics became integral to our operations, and especially in body shops for tasks like welding and material handling.
In June 2024, BMW's plant in South Carolina tested new humanoids by robotics company Figure, a peek into the future of manufacturing.
These robots took on ergonomically challenging tasks, such as inserting sheet metal parts into the precise fixtures for chassis assembly, showcasing that exceptional dexterity and precision can work within our processes, allowing employees to focus on more complex activities and redefining safety and teamwork on the factory floor.
Spotto the robot dog is also redefining safety in BMW's plants.
What Spotto is doing and is equipped with is an advanced visual, thermal and acoustic sensors, enabling it really to perform tasks like monitoring the equipment that we are using in the plant, detecting, for example, compressed air leaks, or collecting data for the plant's digital twin. And this is for us quite exciting, because for the static data that is represented in our digital twin of the plant, we are now adding dynamic data to it, making it more and more becoming a real-time monitoring of the plant.
These kinds of symbiotic relationships between AI and people are the crux of the missing middle.
Thanks, Alex, for a wonderful interview. Paul, I would just love to hear your take on what you just saw there with what BMW is working on. And it really does feel like a world where robots are assisting with so many tasks on a day-to-day basis is not too far away. Would also love for you to kind of dive into the missing middle and your framework of melds, which helps address this.
Yeah, I think Alex and the work BMW is doing is really such a great illustration of it. We're really so pleased that we were able to share that through the video book. The the missing middle is one of the core ideas that Jim and I came up with and talk about throughout Human Plus Machine and highlighted in the video book. The missing middle is making the same point Alex just made in the clip you just saw. Is that the value really comes at the intersection of the human and machine capability, and the missing middle is talking about how do you create that real value where the human and AI capability, human and machine capability come together? The reason we say it's the missing middle is we think too many organizations leave it out. They think only about how does AI replace the human capability, or what tasks can AI do? That'll get you, that'll get you moving forward a little bit, but to really get sustainable long-term value and the maximum value, we believe we need to look at the missing middle and maximizing human and machine collaboration. So we don't have time to go through all of it right now, but we talk about, 3 ways in which humans, augment machine capability that you need to look at. And that's about training, explaining, and sustaining the use of AI. That's kind of uniquely human capabilities come together with AI. And then on the other side, we talk about how you should frame or view AI coming together with human capability. We talk about amplifying, interacting, and embodying human-like skills and capabilities along with AI, and putting those together is where we think what gives you the recipe to look at the work and jobs of the future and how it changes. Now, what we did is then as we went through the book, what Jim and I then did is put together the roadmap of how we think you apply the missing middle and how you kind of get to these right outcomes. And that's what Ronak, you referred to as MELDS, which is the roadmap. It's a easy to remember thing, MELDS. And we believe these are the things that you need to step through and think about to get to the right outcome. It's, M is the mindset around, a little bit of the education, the understanding of the mindset of using the missing middle, and the fact that you're going to look at this human and machine way to optimize value, which is really the right way to optimize value. The E is about experimentation. And we've talked about examples of this already today, but you can't leap right into at scale doing this. You need to experiment, understand the technology and where it's going, how it applies, where it drives value and such. And that experimentation is a really important characteristic, and being ready to fail too with the experiments. That's a new muscle for some organizations. L, so M-E, mindset, experimentation. Leadership is the L. This is talking about the kind of leadership mindset, and in particular, I think something we'll get more into around responsible AI and some of the guardrails and things you need to think about from a leadership perspective as you look at it. The D is digital core and data. This is looking at your underlying capacity to do AI. You can't just jump in and do AI if you don't have the data and you don't have your digital core, the core digital infrastructure and apps sorted out in the right way and modernized in the right way in your organization. So we talk about how to get that digital core, including your data, in the right position to drive and optimize AI value. And then finally, the S, last but not least, certainly is the skills element that I think we'll dive into a little bit more here too, and how you look at skills, education, learning, and building the new skills that you'll need in the future.
There are a lot of kind of practical challenges that companies are going to need to manage as they're applying the MELD framework inside their company. I spoke to an executive last week who told me that he's adopting AI, he's applying the MELD framework, and right now he's letting 1,000 flowers bloom around AI experimentation. And I asked him, I said, well, how many of those experiments that you've got going on all around the company are you scaling up or working to scale up? And his answer was 0. And I think one thing that we consistently see in companies is a need to move from experimentation and learning into real world production systems, and then into company-wide scale. And Paul teed that up at the beginning. But the thing we're seeing is right now only about 10% of companies are really effectively scaling AI to get those enterprise-wide benefits. So they might get a license to ChatGPT, for example, or they might be playing around with Claude, but they're not really scaling it up or putting it into production systems. For the L, or the leadership component of MELDS, I think right now the thing that we're seeing in conversations with executives is that a lot of them are looking at responsible AI kind of as just a risk management program or as a compliance program, and only about 2% of companies are really adopting responsible AI in a more holistic way, where it's really embedded in how the company operates and how the company, distinguishes itself in the marketplace. And by that, we mean really implementing systems that are fair and safe and explainable, sustainable, and human-centric. And moreover, the thing that we're seeing is, companies do need to assign jobs to, around responsible AI, but also make responsible AI part of everyone's job description, right? Actually baking it into those job descriptions. And one other point, Paul mentioned, data and digital core, and, building those data sets is really important, for industry performance, for your AI performance, even workforce performance. And, data is really a new source of competitive advantage. But we're seeing that right now, only about 20% of companies have really modernized their data in the cloud in a way that, the AI models can use it effectively. So that's a big performance improvement opportunity for a lot of companies right now, really getting value from their data, bringing it into their digital core.
It's really interesting. Yeah, I think it sounds like get your data right first, and then
Exactly.
then think about kind of how to leverage AI properly at scale. And Jim, you mentioned a little bit about jobs and kind of how the nature of jobs is changing. Maybe Paul or Jim, whoever kind of wants to lead here. How is artificial intelligence changing the nature of jobs? And then maybe if you can also share some of the new job titles that involve working with AI. I think that would be really interesting to learn about.
Yeah, I'll actually. I was just looking at the chat while Jim was talking, and I think we have some very astute listeners here who made some good points. And I was going to use one of the points that was already made in the chat, which is the simple way to think about how jobs are changing is in the future we're all going to have assistants that are helping us do things more effectively. So the thing I've been talking about for a while is generative AI isn't going to replace coders, but a coder that doesn't know how to use generative AI will not be relevant and able to to kind of find their way or find a job. So that's the way to think about it, is how does AI come together with the jobs? And again, that's the missing middle that we're talking about. And I think the right way to think about this is we wrote a report, and we that talks about this idea of workforce and worker. I think you need to start with the work itself, because if you don't understand, because you need to understand how the overall work process end to end changes before you look at a task and try to automate it. So look at the work at the highest level. For example, in insurance, look at the underwriting process and all the different inputs, the multiple roles played along the path, and how can you change that overall process using generative AI, which some insurance organizations are seeing massive opportunities to do, and able to drive increased underwriting efficiency and effectiveness, and kind of real growth in policy issuance as a result. That's an example. So look at the work, then that'll tell you something about the workforce. Once you change that underwriting process, how does the role of the underwriter change? What does the junior underwriter now do? What are some of the other roles that change? And that'll give you a sense of the changing workforce composition. And then you look at what skills and what AI-enabled skills and otherwise do people need. And that progression, I think, is the right way to understand the impact on the jobs and the workers. Jim, why don't you talk a little bit about you're seeing from some of the research and what we're seeing out there as we track the changes in jobs?
Yeah, we're seeing, so first of all, we're starting to see really interesting new job titles out there, right? If you go on Indeed.com or even LinkedIn, people posting for these kind of jobs of the future, AI personality trainers and chatbot personality trainers, AI safety trainers and safety engineers. Out here in San Francisco for the past 6 or 7 years, there have been people driving autonomous vehicles and basically training those autonomous vehicles, and now they're fully autonomous on the streets of San Francisco. But a lot of those roles, training AI systems, are really important, and they're often in the safety training and safety engineering space. We're seeing a lot of the data scientists that kind of came of age in the age of analytics now in a sense, being kind of refashioning their careers around machine learning and natural language processing. NLP type, natural language processing expert types of roles, a lot of hiring happening in that space. We're seeing banks and regulated industries hiring explainable machine learning engineers who help design models and computer interfaces across the business to really explain why an AI is making a particular recommendation. And if your company is doing business, in Europe, for example, with GDPR, you absolutely have to have those types of roles. I think some of the biggest changes that we're seeing actually are happening on the augmentation front, where you have traditional roles that are starting to use AI in looking at, as Paul said, looking at the work and then actually changing the way the worker does the job, right? So AI assisted HR specialists, right? And it might be the case that the HR specialist still has that traditional job title, but they're actually doing AI augmented work, or AI-powered sales copywriters, or AI visual content creators. So we're seeing people in the design space, for example, now using generative systems to really help them in their work and to design new products. So a lot happening both on the more technical side, but also on the augmentation side right now.
Yeah, and then just in terms of kind of where some real demand is, there was a LinkedIn study that came out recently of where job demand is right now. And the number one area, number one open demand was AI engineer. Number two was AI consultant, and then there's a number of other roles. And then right around 10 was data scientist. So the people who can do, there's all the implications on everybody in the workforce, as Jim just talked about, but there's a tremendous need for more of the skills specifically in applying the AI as well.
It's fascinating. I wonder, a few years from now, how these roles are going to evolve even further. I wanted to get to chatting about responsibility in AI a little bit before we kind of jump into Q&A. So if we could cue up the clip about that, we'd love to just present that and then chat a little bit about responsibility in AI before answering some questions from the audience.
But getting AI right in an organization isn't just about strategy, it's also about responsibility.
I think a lot of companies might initially think that if you're a large company, you have a policy group or your legal department can handle this, and it's not really integrated into the workforce. The thing that we're seeing is responsible AI actually is everyone's job.
It's just a matter of time before you're going to encounter bad results because of a lack of accuracy, or biased results, or inadvertent uses of data, and other risks that are real risks that need to be considered as you deploy AI. So establishing those guardrails, establishing a formal responsible AI program is essential. Our research that we've done shows that less than 15% of companies are really putting those programs in place. Almost every company would say they believe in responsibility and they can list a set of ethical principles, but it's not enough to talk about principles. You need to have policies, processes, training, and systems to put it in place to know that those guardrails are effective.
Would you mind sharing a little bit more about kind of what advice do you have to leaders that are trying to implement AI in an ethical and responsible fashion?
Yeah, the thing that you need to do is, first of all, treat it as a C-suite responsibility. One thing I've asked companies is there somebody in your C-suite of your company that's accountable for responsible AI? If not, then you're just not gonna. It's not gonna be effective. The second thing is, do you understand every use of AI in your company? And most companies don't know, because there's a lot of different experiments going on. But if you don't know where it's being used, you can't assess the risk. And then once the third question then is, for each use of AI, once you know where it's being used, do you understand the risk level? And do you have a plan for mitigating the risks it might involve? For example, if you're using it in HR, in some areas it might have bias-related issues that are and risks that you need to mitigate for. There might be accuracy risks if you're using it in in compliance related processes. So do you understand that? And then the fourth point is, do you have a compliance program and training program in place for all of your people? As Jim said earlier, everybody needs to embrace this. Do you have that in place to do? That's hard work. It's heavy lifting at the company. You know, Jim and I work at Accenture. We actually have responsible AI added as another compliance program that's accountable and that we report on quarterly to the audit committee of our board of directors. And that is, you know, that we believe is the level of discipline, rigor, and structure that you need to really, you know, to really implement responsible AI and know that you're getting the right outcomes.
Amazing. And maybe one more question before we hop into Q&A with questions from the audience. So leaders are, I think really struggling to figure out how to keep up in the world of AI and tech. What advice do you have for, folks that are kind of overwhelmed with the speed of AI development? How can they keep abreast of everything that they should be, learning about?
I'll start, Jim, and you can add in maybe. I'd get back to this participation sport thing and the need to use it. And I think I think you need to personally embrace it and commit yourself to a learning agenda around it. This is we're in a time when it's not just what AI can do today, as we've talked about, but it's going to continue to change. And each of us needs to set ourselves up and set our organizations up and put the programs in place to create, make ourselves learning individuals and our organizations learning organizations. So that's I think, the short answer on it. And from a personal perspective, if you're not using one of the generative AI tools on at least a weekly basis, if not a daily basis, then I think you're shortchanging yourself, and you need to. I use multiple ones because just Grok is the latest one I downloaded based on the announcements that just came out. But DeepSeek, Claude, ChatGPT, Perplexity, they're all worth using, and you'll see they'll teach you different things. If you ask similar questions to different ones, you'll learn more about how the technology works and how you might want to apply it, how you might want to create the interaction with your employees. So I can't emphasize enough, this is an era of technology where your own ability to understand and be a user of the technology will dramatically impact your own career prospects and will help you be a better leader and coach, guider of others.
If you're using the AI tool in the C-suite, you can develop a pretty good filter on what works and what works for you, but also what could work for your company, right? You get a good grounded sense of what AI looks like in practice. You can see C-suite executives using it, for example, for strategic planning, but also getting a sense of how the tool might impact their operations or their finance department. The thing we see across more than 1,000 AI implementations across companies is when CEOs get personally involved in the AI initiative using the tool, they're twice as likely to see value from that initiative, right? So twice as likely, and that's somewhat anecdotal, it's from our own experience, but we're seeing that again and again, that personal commitment, both in leading the change effort, but also in using it, is really critical, just to build on what Paul was saying.
Great point.
Really has to be top down. C-suite should be
top down, bottom up. Yes.
Top down and bottom up.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks again. This has been amazing insight. There have been a lot of people speaking in the chat and then also adding questions into Slido. So I'm going to try to do my best to get to as many of them as we can. So the first one here, any tips on cutting through the hype when assessing AI solutions? Most platforms are a bit of a black box, or even solutions labeled as AI could often be overhyped.
Yeah, we're at it's the way the technology industry works. When a new thing comes out, everybody relabels their products and says that's what they are. So everything's an AI product all of a sudden, and now everything's an agentic AI product, even more so with with agents and agentic AI. So I think the answers in the question itself. I think you have to really be careful and really understand what you're looking for. Like, so what kinds of so if you're looking for CRM with generative AI capabilities, or for evaluating an AI tool, you need to really just ask all the right questions, have your requirements clearly articulated in terms of what kinds of things are going to drive value for you, and really look under the covers and ask the questions, because I know from the companies that approach me, and I'm sure the companies that approach everyone listening, everything is AI, everything's agentic, and you will need to cut through the hype and assess the reality. That's where the experimentation comes into. You need to try this stuff and do the POCs and understand what the capabilities really are too.
Yeah, a lot of the hype right now is around kind of automation, right? And the idea that, okay, well, this new breakthrough is going to allow companies, this new Gen AI breakthrough or widget is going to allow companies to automate all these things. And the thing that we're seeing is actually that's only about 1/5 of the use cases are kind of automating business tasks. There's a lot more that AI can do, and you start to learn what those things are when you start experimenting, right? Boosting productivity, right, through augmentation. We're seeing a lot in quality outputs as well. We're starting to see a lot of use cases around, content creation and personalizing content, right? So if you're a media company, are there opportunities with all your media to start to personalize both the interface and the content itself with Gen AI? Improving coding. Coders are kind of way ahead of the curve. They've been using it extensively. If you look at the software companies, software and platform companies, they're using it extensively. They're not automating their jobs entirely. They're really using it as an augmentation tool, as a co-pilot. And then also, a fifth thing that we're seeing is really enhancing enterprise governance, right? Sharing knowledge more effectively. I mentioned that energy company earlier, but also using it in security contexts and so on. So there's a lot more that, than just automation that you need to think about, and that can help you sort through kind of the hype right now.
Yeah.
And thanks, Paul and Jim. And lots of other questions here. So what are the best uses or use cases of AI driving productivity for employees and companies that you have seen so far?
Yeah, I'll give you some of the examples. There's a lot happening in customer care, customer service related areas that I think we'll continue to see a lot more there. Those are areas where automation, robotic process automation, other forms of AI have been applied for many years. So it's not a surprise that generative AI is now being applied. But it does, with generative AI, you can achieve kind of much higher level results. One example there is a telecommunications company that used generative AI models on top of AI and things they already had in place in their call centers. And this was a kind of a B2B kind of call center capability. And their agents were able to, with the generative AI assist, to better understand customer needs and better find solution fit for the customer's problem. They were able to operate with 30% greater productivity. And the more interesting and important finding and surprising finding was that the customer NPS, their net promoter score and satisfaction, went up by 60%. So you got the productivity, and to Jim's point on quality and such, the results were better. They didn't have to call back, and the customer satisfaction went up. That's just one anecdote in that area of customer service, which is an important one. I think Jim gave a great example in the safety area earlier from an energy company, which I think is a great example where there's kind of real impact and real results. That the growth areas, I think, where it gets interesting. One of the interesting examples that I like to talk about is a large media organization that we worked with to use generative AI to create new products. This wasn't like writing news feeds more effectively. This was actually allowing them to create news products that are customized to, different locations, or might be your local whatever kids group or whatever, or team that they have, and you can create what looks like very fun customized news coverage of very local or very even personal events, and that creates a growth opportunity for that company that they would never be able to achieve without that kind of human and machine input. So those are a couple examples. Jim always has a lot of good ones too. So any you want to add?
Yeah,
Jim?
I was just thinking about we're talking about customer service and productivity, and I think there might be an impulse with a lot of executives to say, all right, well, this is a good opportunity to actually bring down, to cost cut across different functions right now. And the thing that we see, if we take the long view, we did an analysis going back about 10 years on companies that are adopting new AI systems, and we saw that about 40% of large companies have actually seen a decrease in productivity, right? And what they have in common is they kind of take a overly narrow view of technology adoption, just using it for kind of cost management and efficiency. But the leading 25% of companies have actually grown productivity by about 8%. And they really tend to adopt new technology like artificial intelligence to innovate and to improve quality. For example, higher quality, more empathetic responses in a call center. So I really think that the tech-enabled quality and innovation that you can get also can raise the economic value of a company's products and its outputs, right? And we see that again and again in our analysis. We saw on average, just looking at AI, an improvement of about 12%, which is really significant. So as you're looking across different applications and different functions to apply this, don't just think, all right, well, this is a chance to automate. Yeah, maybe a third of the tasks you can automate, but also how do you unlock, right, human value in new ways and shift what people are doing toward new activities and toward augmented activities. And I think that's where you really are going to get that economic value, not simply kind of bottom line, but also top line growth.
Thanks, Jim and Paul. I'm going to try to do two.
One thing I want to add on that,
questions.
that's the whole reason Jim and I wrote the book, is really to reset this, that we really truly believe, the research supports the fact that you need to look at the top line and the bottom line and look at the human plus machine, and that's where the value lies. And the reason we wrote the book is to provide a bit of a guide to not just looking at the bottom line, not just look at AI to automate individual tasks and replace work that's going on. The real value, the real impact on the business, the real breakthrough results are looking at the combination. So sorry, just wanted to add that in. So that was a fuel to write the book in the first place.
So wonderful and positive outlook on AI. That I definitely agree with. And maybe just two quick fire questions, and then we can wrap up. The first is, are there any platforms that you would recommend for upskilling and training employees and leaders on AI? And the second is, just generally, and maybe personally, what are your favorite resources to stay up to date on everything AI that could help you in your life?
Well, there's a number of platforms. It depends on what level of information and such that you're looking for more, some of the more understanding the technology and what's happening. There's great resources out there. There's a platform our company has called LearnVantage. There's platforms like Coursera. There's a particularly good one called deeplearning.ai by Andrew Ng, who's one of the pioneers in this whole field. So there's a variety of things like that. I think there's a number of really good podcasts that are out there. I'd encourage you to go look around. We can maybe share some of that through the notes or follow up. And then there's I think there's a lot being written. The good news is there's a lot being written that's pretty thoughtful, thoughtful right now around it by some journalists. So kind of looking for the right articles and feeds to keep on top of it is definitely important.
Yeah, I read a lot of the newsletters. I encourage particularly, senior leaders, CEOs to pick at least one or two newsletters and they come in weekly. There's a guy who's a former journalist who now works at Anthropic, and he's one of the founders of Anthropic, named Jack Clark, and he's got a great newsletter on kind of the emerging trends in the AI space called Import AI. I tend to read Archive, which is a bit more technical, the computer science papers that are posted daily, sometimes 5 new significant reports come through a day, but just monitoring or even using Gen AI to help you monitor what's happening on archive.org is another great resource.
Yeah, and the one, since Jim tossed out some specific ones, I'll add one in, which is Exponential View, which is by a futurist called Azim Azar, which is a particularly good one. That's a compendium weekly. It's my one must-read thing I read every week is Azim Azar's. But Jim makes a good point. I also go in and use some of the new capabilities. Deep research is a brand new capability from OpenAI that you can use to learn a lot really fast. So I think that's the other thing I'd encourage you to do. Look at the kind of current current ways we do these things, blogs and podcasts and such, but you can use the AI itself to learn a lot real fast.
Thanks again, Paul and Jim. It's really been such a pleasure. I think all the attendees are going to hopefully walk away learning something new about the world of AI and how to navigate it. And just quickly before we hop off, if you haven't yet, please follow our Lit Videobooks on LinkedIn for upcoming fireside chats. And if you're interested in how Lit for Teams can, ignite micro-learning at your company, HR learning development leaders get 2-week free access to the platform. So just go to our website, find Lit for Teams, and you can get more information there. Paul and Jim, thanks so much for your time, and it was a pleasure.
Thanks, Ronak.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.